The German Ardennes offensive, launched on December 16, 1944, aimed to split the Allied lines, seize Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. Bastogne, a jagged road junction in the Ardennes forest of Belgium, mattered because 7 main roads converged there, making it the linchpin for movement and supply. As German armored spearheads pushed west, elements of the 101st Airborne Division, then commanded in Bastogne by Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe, along with attached units including elements of the 10th Armored Division and Combat Command B, were rushed to hold the town. By December 20th to 21st, German forces had encircled Bastogne, cutting rail and road links and isolating roughly 11,000 U.S. troops. A savage winter settled in. Temperatures plunged below freezing. Wind and deep snow froze equipment, clogged artillery, and turned roads to sheets of ice while mud became treacherous. Rations dwindled. Winter clothing was scarce. Medicines and ammunition ran low, and evacuating the wounded became perilous. Belgian families and refugees shared cramped cellars with the GIs, and for soldiers nursing homesickness and hollow bellies, Christmas loomed as a cruel reminder. December 25, 1944 was a date on letters they could no longer send. That convergence of strategic necessity and human hardship set the stage for defiance, desperation, and stubborn heroism, with relief depending on General Patton's Third Army drive. By December 22, 1944, the ring around Bastogne had tightened into an iron grip. German units had severed the 7 main roads into town, cut telephone lines, and isolated roughly 11,000 American soldiers defending the crossroads. Cold was an active enemy. Temperatures plunged well below freezing. Snow draped the Ardennes in deceptive silence, and vehicles stalled in ruts turned to glass, so every logistical failure could be life or death. Ammunition stocks dwindled for some companies, medical supplies were rationed, and casualty evacuation to rear hospitals was often impossible as enemy patrols prowled the hedgerows. Civilians huddled in cellars with GIs while the 101st Airborne Division, elements of the 10th Armored Division, and Combat Command B improvised defensive sectors, manning hedgerows, burning doors for heat, and redistributing scarce winter clothing. On the morning of December 22nd, a German delegation presented a formal demand for surrender to the American command in Bastogne, an attempt to shortcut resistance and clear the axis for armored thrusts toward the Meuse. Brigadier General Anthony C. McAuliffe, acting division commander, answered the typed demand with a single laconic word: nuts. The reply was blunt, morale-sharpening, and unambiguous. Staff officers hurried to translate it into a more diplomatic phrase for the Germans, but the spirit was unmistakable. Subscribe. It seemed to help morale. That curt defiance crystallized leadership under siege, rallied exhausted soldiers, and stiffened the town's resolve even as ration points fell and radios sputtered. In the teeth of winter and enemy pressure, commanders began stringing desperate plans, scavenging artillery rounds, rerouting fuel, preparing for airdrops, and sending urgent appeals for relief that would force a reckoning in the days to come. After McAuliffe's curt nuts, the siege did not ease. It sharpened. By December 23, 1944, food had dwindled to K rations and fragments of C rations. Cooks melted snow for tea, and men traded precious cigarettes for scraps of chocolate and hardtack. Ammunition ran low, mortar teams conserved rounds, artillery batteries fired only pre-planned, vital barrages, and patrols returned with empty bandoliers. Winter added a new layer of danger. Trench foot, frostbite, and hypothermia multiplied in makeshift aid stations carved into cellar walls. Surgeons worked by oil lamp and rationed morphine. Amputations were performed when gangrene set in, and pneumonia took men who had already given too much. Improvisation became routine. Stovepipes from lockers warmed decimated wards, ammunition boxes burned under tin cans served as cookers, and replacement radio antennas were fashioned from bicycle spokes and thin wire so news could crawl back to division headquarters. The German attackers fared no better. Units sent in from the 6th Army and neighboring formations suffered shattered fuel supplies, frozen tracks, and thin winter coats. German infantry, exhausted, hungry, and longing for Christmas, sang halting carols in ruined farmsteads between assaults. That shared human misery made the battle both savage and tender. Americans wrapped Christmas cards in greatcoats to warm hands, and Germans treasured cigarettes passed in the snow. Forecasts began to bend the story. On December 23rd, meteorologists reported clearing skies, and Allied planners readied C-47 sky trains and gliders for urgent airdrops. General George S. Patton's Third Army received orders to pivot north. The promise of parachute bundles and a steel column racing through the Ardennes introduced a fragile hope, setting the stage for a violent, decisive push toward Bastogne in the days to come. Skies finally cleared on December 23, 1944. The slender promise of air relief became real the next day, when C-47 sky trains and gliders began perilous sorties over the Ardennes. On December 24th and 25th, transport crews braved icing, flak, and the white glare of snow to drop ammunition, medical supplies, blood plasma, morphine, winter clothing, and mail into the Bastogne perimeter. Bundles and pallets parachuted into fields and shattered hedgerows, reviving exhausted companies and delivering the small mercies that steadied men for another day. Letters from home, cigarettes, tins of peaches. The airdrops were never a cure. Wind tore canopies, some loads blew into German-held territory, and night temperatures froze exposed parachute bundles into useless masses. Crews counted hits on fuselages, and commanders counted still missing rounds. Ground commanders redistributed what arrived, prioritizing artillery shells and mortar rounds, then stoves and morphine for the wounded, but ammunition remained limited and casualty evacuation was still perilous. Far to the south, General George S. Patton's Third Army, ordered to pivot north on December 22nd, pushed iron columns through enemy-held lanes. Combat Command B and the 4th Armored Division smashed through ambushes and clogged crossroads, racing over churned roads and across broken bridges with wrenching mechanical effort. Tank and half-track crews fought glare and sleet as dogged German rearguards tried to delay them. By Christmas Day, the siege had become a high-stakes race. The air brought vital lifelines and a fragile surge in morale, but the fate of Bastogne depended on whether Patton's battered but brilliant drive could break the ring before ammunition and human endurance ran out. On December 26, 1944, Patton's armored columns, elements of Combat Command B and the 4th Armored Division, crashed into Bastogne and shattered the German ring. Tracks churned frozen roads, tanks punched through hedgerows and rolled into the town square. A shell-scarred church bell tolled like a stunned metronome. Exhausted troopers of the 101st, frostbitten and radiant, climbed from foxholes to embrace the armored crews. Sergeants wept as men tore open mailbags and tins and handed out coffee boiled on gasoline stoves. Medics, triumphant, triaged the wounded and counted the living. Morphine was taken off rationing. German patrols, caught off guard in their sleep, surrendered with blank, bewildered faces, while other soldiers melted into the hedgerows, boots scuffed and empty. Tactically, the relief freed Patton's flank, reopened the roads through Bastogne's 7 main approaches, and allowed ammunition and field hospitals to flow into the salient. The stiff American defense, McAuliffe's nuts, and Patton's steel combined to blunt the Ardennes offensive. For a fierce golden morning instant, the siege broke and raw human relief spread through the town like sun through riven clouds. When Bastogne was relieved, the American defense had clear strategic consequences. It blunted the German Ardennes offensive, denied the Wehrmacht the road junctions they needed to reach the Meuse and Antwerp, and kept Allied forces coherent at a critical moment in December 1944. That stubborn defense, anchored by General Anthony McAuliffe's laconic "nuts" reply, became a touchstone of morale and a symbol of American grit, buying time for reserves to stabilize the front. But victory came at a heavy cost. Hundreds dead, many more wounded, and lives changed by frostbite, amputations, and the lingering trauma of siege. Soldiers on both sides spent a bitter Christmas in frozen mud, trading small mercies amid the horror. Bastogne still lives on in memorials, museums, and films, a reminder that tactics and tenacity have a human cost, and a prompt to ask how we honor courage without romanticizing suffering.